The day had been long, the kind of long that settles into your shoulders and makes your eyes feel heavier than they should. Sarah had been on her feet since 6 in the morning, managing phone calls, sorting through emails, running between meetings that never seemed to end. By the time the clock on her office wall hit 5:30, she was already dreaming of home. She gathered her things quickly, said goodnight to her colleagues, and walked to the parking lot with only one thought in her mind: her daughter. Lily was 7 years old. She had her mother's eyes and her father's laugh, and she had a way of making every room feel warmer just by walking into it. Sarah had picked her up from school that afternoon, just like every other day. Lily had climbed into the back seat with her backpack still bouncing on her shoulders, talking before she had even closed the door. She had so much to say about her drawing class, about the butterfly she had seen at recess, about the song her teacher had taught them that morning. Sarah had listened with a smile on her face as she pulled out of the school parking lot. This was her favorite part of the day. Not the moment when the work was done, not the first sip of coffee in the morning, but this drive home with Lily's voice filling the car like music. She reached back and squeezed her daughter's hand at a red light, and Lily giggled and squeezed back. It was such a small moment, the kind of moment that people never think to remember, because they assume there will always be more of them. The evening sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. The traffic was light for once, and the roads were dry and clear. Sarah felt the tension of the day beginning to leave her body, slowly, the way it always did when she was close to home. She turned onto the main road that led to their neighborhood, a road she had driven hundreds of times before. She knew every turn, every speed bump, every traffic light along the way. It felt like second nature. It felt safe. Lily had started singing. It was the song from her classroom, the one her teacher had taught her, and she was singing it loudly and proudly the way only a 7-year-old can. She did not care if the words were slightly wrong or if the tune drifted off. She was happy, and she wanted the whole world to know it. Sarah laughed softly and joined in for a few words, and Lily erupted into delighted laughter at hearing her mother try to keep up. The car felt full of life, full of love, full of everything that made ordinary days feel extraordinary. That was when the phone lit up. It was sitting on the passenger seat, face up, the way it always was. The screen glowed softly in the fading daylight, and the notification sat there, small and quiet and completely harmless looking. Sarah's eyes caught it for just a moment at the corner of her vision. She did not mean to look. It was automatic, the way people glance at movement without deciding to. Her brain registered it before she had even made a choice. A message. One message. She told herself it was probably nothing. It usually was. A reminder from an app, a message from a coworker. Something that could absolutely wait until she was home and sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea in her hands. She knew that. She understood that. Every part of her rational mind knew that whatever was on that screen could wait another 10 minutes. But there was another part of her, the distracted part, the part that had been running on low all day, and that part whispered that it would only take a second. Just 1 second. Her hand moved toward the phone before she had fully made the decision. Her eyes dipped down for just a moment, just long enough to read the first few words of the message. Lily was still singing in the back seat. The road ahead was still clear. Everything was fine. And then her eyes were back on the road, or so she thought. But the truth was that 1 second had already stretched into 2, and 2 into 3. And in 3 seconds, so much can happen on a road that you think you know by heart. The car drifted. Just slightly. Just a few inches to the left. It was the kind of drift that you would not even notice if you were paying attention. The kind your hands would correct automatically. But Sarah's hands were not correcting. Her mind was still half on the phone, still processing the words she had just read, still somewhere else. The car moved with quiet ease across the lane line, slow and smooth, as if it had all the time in the world. The truck came from the opposite direction. It was not speeding. The driver was not distracted. He was doing everything right, following every rule, staying in his lane, his eyes on the road ahead. He saw the headlights cross the center line, and he reacted instantly, pulling hard to his right, but there was no time. There was no space. The road was not wide enough for both the mistake and the correction. The sound was like nothing Sarah had ever heard in her life. There was a screech of tires that seemed to last forever, and then there was an impact so sudden and so complete that it wiped every other sound from the world. Metal folded, glass shattered, the car spun and came to rest against the shoulder of a road, and then everything was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silent. Not the kind that follows laughter or music or a child singing in the backseat. This was a different kind of silence. The kind that feels wrong. The kind that makes your heart stop before your mind can understand why. Sarah opened her eyes slowly. There was something warm on her face, and it took her a moment to understand that it was blood. Her head had struck the side window, and the airbag had deployed, and her whole body felt like it had been shaken inside a box. She could hear a ringing in her ears that drowned out everything else. She blinked, once, twice, trying to understand where she was, trying to remember what had happened. And then, in one horrible moment, she remembered. She turned toward the back seat. Lily was not singing anymore. The back seat was a different shape than it had been before. The door on Lily's side had crumpled inward, folded by the force of the impact in a way that made Sarah's stomach drop before her mind caught up to what she was seeing. Lily was still in her car seat, still strapped in the way Sarah had buckled her before they left the school parking lot. She was small and pale and completely still, and her eyes were closed. And no matter how many times Sarah said her name, she did not open them. Sarah does not remember opening the car door. She does not remember how she got from the front seat to her daughter's side. She only remembers being there, holding Lily's small hand, pressing it to her own face, saying her name over and over like a prayer, like if she said it enough times something would change. Around her, other cars had stopped. People were running toward them. Someone was on the phone, calling for help. But all of that felt like it was happening far away, behind glass, in a world that Sarah was no longer fully part of. The ambulance arrived in minutes. To Sarah, it felt like a lifetime. The paramedics worked quickly and quietly, the way people do when they are trained to stay calm in moments that would break anyone else. They spoke to each other in short, professional sentences, and they were careful and gentle. And Sarah stood a few feet away and watched them lift her daughter onto a stretcher, and she felt something inside her chest come apart in a way that she did not think would ever fully go back together. At the hospital, time stopped working the way it was supposed to. Minutes felt like hours. The waiting room had chairs with thin cushions and bright overhead lights, and a television mounted on the wall showing a program that no one was watching. Sarah sat in one of those chairs with dried blood still on her face and her hands folded in her lap, and she stared at the floor and tried to breathe. A nurse had looked at her injuries, a cut on her forehead, bruised ribs, a sprained wrist, and had told her she was lucky. Sarah had not said anything in response. She was not sure she understood the word anymore. Her husband, Mark, arrived 40 minutes after she called him. She heard his footsteps before she saw him, fast and heavy on the tile floor, and when he came through the doors his face looked the way she felt, broken open, terrified, reaching for something solid to hold on to. He sat beside her and took her hands in his, and neither of them spoke for a long time. There was nothing to say. There were no words that fit inside the space that the accident had created. A doctor came to speak with them after what felt like forever. He was calm and measured and kind, and he told them things that Sarah heard but could not fully absorb. Lily had sustained a serious head injury. There was swelling. She was stable, which was the word everyone seemed to use, a word that was supposed to be a comfort, but that felt more like standing on the edge of something and not knowing which way would fall. She would need surgery. They would know more in the coming hours. Mark asked the questions that Sarah could not form. She sat very still and let his voice fill the room and focused on keeping her breathing even. Every time her mind tried to go back to the moment, to the phone, to the notification, to the 1 second she had looked away, she pulled it back. She could not go there yet. She could not afford to go to pieces, not here, not now, not when her daughter still needed her to hold herself together. The surgery lasted 4 hours. Sarah did not sleep. She did not eat the sandwich that a kind nurse brought her. She sat in that waiting room, and she counted the floor tiles, and she listened to the sound of the hospital around her, The soft footsteps, the distant beeping of machines, the low voices of other families, sitting in their own versions of the same nightmare. She thought about the drive home. She thought about Lily singing. She thought about how the evening had looked, all that orange and pink in the sky, and how she had felt the stress of the day leaving her body just before everything changed. She thought about the phone. She thought about how she had picked it up without really deciding to, how her hand had moved before her mind had given it permission, how she had told herself it would only take a second, the way people always tell themselves these things, the way everyone tells themselves these things, because a second feels like nothing, feels like barely anything at all, feels completely safe. And yet a second was exactly enough. 1 second was all the road had needed to take everything she loved and place it in a room she could not enter, behind a door she could not open, in the hands of strangers who were trying to put her daughter back together. When the surgeon finally came into the waiting room, Sarah stood up so fast that she felt dizzy. She gripped Mark's arm and she looked at the doctor's face and she tried to read it before he had even opened his mouth, the way parents do, the way every parent in that position does, searching for some sign of what is coming. The surgery had gone well. Lily was out of the operating room. She was not yet awake, and it would take time to know the full extent of everything. But she was alive. She was stable. She was fighting. Sarah sat back down because her legs would not hold her anymore. She cried then for the first time since the crash. Not the quiet kind of crying, not the dignified kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and uncontrollable. The kind that shakes your whole body. The kind that has been held back so long that when it finally comes it brings everything with it. Mark held her and she pressed her face against his shoulder and she let it all come out. The fear, the guilt, the relief, the grief, the weight of the hours she had just lived through. And underneath all of it, pressing up against everything else, the knowledge that she had done this. That this was her fault. That her little girl was in that room, in that bed, because of 1 second. They allowed her to see Lily later that night. The room was quiet and dim, full of the soft sounds of machines doing the work that Lily's body was not yet strong enough to do on its own. She was so small in that hospital bed, so impossibly small. Her dark hair was spread against the white pillow, and her face was still and pale and peaceful in the way that would have been beautiful under any other circumstance. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped in slow, steady rhythms, and Sarah pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down and reached through the rail to take her daughter's hand. She held it the way she had held it at that red light earlier in the evening, before everything changed. She pressed it to her cheek and closed her eyes and sat very still. She did not say much. There were no right words. She said Lily's name softly a few times. She told her that she was there. She told her that she was not going anywhere. And then, in the quietest voice she had ever used, barely more than a breath, she said the words that had been pressing against the inside of her chest since the moment she had woken up in the wreckage of the car. She said, "No message is worth this." She said it to her daughter. She said it to herself. She said it to the empty room and the beeping machines and the white walls and to every version of herself that had ever reached for a phone while behind the wheel of a car, every version of herself that had ever thought that 1 second was not enough time for something to go terribly, permanently wrong. Because here's the truth that Sarah learned on that road, on that ordinary evening, on what should have been just another quiet drive home. The road does not care how tired you are. The road does not care that you have been driving this route for years and know every turn by heart. The road does not care that you are a careful person, a loving person, a good mother who would do absolutely anything to protect her child. The road does not give warnings. It does not send a sign before the second that everything changes. It just keeps going, and you are either present in it or you are not. And the difference between those two things is not something you get to choose after the fact. Lily spent 11 days in the hospital. There were hard days and better days, days when the doctors were cautious and days when they were more hopeful. Sarah was there for every single one of them. She slept in the chair beside the bed. She held Lily's hand through every test and every procedure. She read her stories aloud even on the days when Lily did not seem to hear them, because she needed to believe that her daughter was still in there, still listening, still fighting her way back. And slowly, gently, she was. Lily woke up on the 4th day. She looked at her mother for a long moment without speaking, and then she said very quietly, "Mama, my head hurts." And Sarah laughed and cried at the same time, the way people do in moments that contain too many feelings to separate them. She told her daughter that she was going to be okay. She told her that she was the bravest girl in the whole world. And she held her hand and did not let go for a very long time. The recovery was slow. There were weeks of rehabilitation, weeks of patience, weeks of watching Lily relearn things that had once been effortless. There were moments of frustration and moments of exhaustion and moments when it felt like the road back was so much longer than it should have been. But there were also moments of grace. Small victories that meant more than anything Sarah had ever celebrated before. The first time Lily walked across the room on her own. The first time she laughed again. That full and joyful laugh that sounded like her father's. The first time she sang, tentatively and quietly, a few words of that song from her classroom. Sarah has never picked up her phone while driving again. Not once. Not even at a red light. Not even for a second. She turned off her notifications before she starts the car, and she does not turn them back on until she is parked and the engine is off. It is such a small change. It takes almost no effort at all. And she wishes, with everything she has, that she had made that change before that evening. She wishes she had understood, before the screech of tires and the shattering glass and the terrible silence, that there is no such thing as one safe second when you are responsible for a life. If you are reading this or listening to this right now, please hear what Sarah could not hear until it was almost too late. Every time you reach for your phone behind the wheel, you are making a choice. You may not feel like you are making a choice. It may feel automatic, harmless, fast. But you are choosing to divide your attention between the road and something else. And the road demands everything. It does not accept partial presence. It does not negotiate. The message can wait. The notification can wait. The call can wait. Whatever it is, however urgent it feels in that moment, it can wait until you are stopped, until you are safe, until you have given the road the full attention it requires. Because the people in your car, your children, your family, the strangers in the other vehicle, they cannot wait. Their lives are happening in real time, and they depend on you to be fully there. 1 second can be the whole story. Do not let it be yours.